You're listening to episode 121 of the Your Next Chapter podcast, where Leanne Vanderlight and I have a wholehearted conversation about how to design your own wellness map, the one that fits you now, so you can let go of all that conditioning and the BS dieting methodologies that have been stuck in our head for far too long. It's a bit of a personal conversation, this one, because Leanne is my own wellness coach, and my goodness, I have learned so much from her. I hope you enjoy it. Building a business and life that blends contribution, fulfillment, and financial reward? Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the show for women in their 40s and beyond who are on this adventure. I'm Angela Rasmus, and I'm delighted you're here. Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. I've been going for a little bit of a journey myself lately around the wellness space and what wellness means to me, and now I understand the need to actually break some of the conditioning that's been stuck in this wee head of mine for an extremely long time. So when I met this wonderful woman that I have on the line today, I knew that I had to share the insights that I've been experiencing and the light bulb moments that have been going off. I knew I needed to bring her onto the podcast because if I've been battling against this type of conditioning when it comes to weight and diet and wellness and all that jazz, then I'm sure that you may have as well. And that's why Leanne Vanderlight from Uplift Health Coaching, way down in Little River, doesn't that sound cool, in Melbourne, is my guest today. Leanne, thank you so much for making the time to talk with me today.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited
to be talking
to you. Yeah, it's a lovely conversation.
Well, that's the whole thing. When we get together on these podcasts to have these conversations, they're really about, sharing the stories of real people. Like, I'm a real woman with real curves and all of that sort of thing. I'm never going to be one of those people that, gets highlighted on Instagram, and that's okay. This is the sort of stuff that, as you and I have spoken about so often, the wellness journey for a woman in her 50s is very different to perhaps the not-so-wellness journey I tried to do in my 20s. And when we first connected on Facebook and had that first conversation, I really recognized a kindred spirit. So tell us about your previous chapters, Leanne. Before you came to this world of really focusing on women's health and wellness, what else has happened in your life? There's always these previous chapters.
Well, I suppose I grew up always loving sport, and that was kind of a gift, I think, now looking back. It's a gift that was given to me by my parents, because no matter what I struggled with as I was growing, moving states, moving places, I always found I went back to exercise to kind of help me restructure. So for me, it was always a routine thing, I suppose, finding that routine, finding new people, finding new interests. At about 20, I decided I'd move to Melbourne because I was a country girl. It's about 3 hours from Melbourne. And I started teaching aerobics. So I was always kind of that weirdo friend that loved exercise. And, those ones that preach to you.
And did you have the leg warmers, Leanne? Did you have the leg warmers? I got to know.
Yeah, that was in the 80s, and it was high. It was when high impact was high. G-strings were, the fluoro, G-strings that you wore, the leotard. I'm trying to think of the word, leotard. So I taught aerobics for about 15 years of it, I think, until into my 30s. However, I can say I was a bit of a nutter, so I still, probably didn't value, being in my 20s. It was more about having fun and having abs, and I didn't really get it. I don't think for a long time, but I certainly didn't appreciate when those women turned up to the aerobic classes that they had been juggling families and they'd been working all day. For me, who had heaps of energy and no cares to the world in my 20s and 30s, I didn't appreciate how hard that really was. So they were there to work, and that's all I cared about, I suppose. So it wasn't until I always worked part-time doing that, always had a full-time job doing IT and serious, working in corporate, that kind of stuff. And I think it wasn't until I became a mum, and I also worked with mums because I left the corporate world and I stayed at home, looked after the kids, juggled a home business, doing exercise and PT and classes for mums. And, you know, it was pretty crazy because I had a babysitter inside minding the kids while we were outside training, because that's the only way we could do it. So we all paid this babysitter, the poor lady, to look after all the kids. And we all trained for probably a good 10 years like that until our kids were older. I think, I don't think I appreciated it until I became a mum and how hard that really was to try and keep your sanity, have no energy, no sleep. I think, I was fortunate to meet some really amazing women. And, I think that's the key, is being surrounded by mind-like women that want a similar thing, or at least can laugh at yourselves, that can laugh, you know, along the journey when you're going crazy, that you know you're not alone. So I think,
absolutely. I mean, we've all heard that expression that we are the product of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. I mean, our surrounding influences are incredibly important, and it's so true. As you said, you can never appreciate what are the demands of motherhood until you've actually experienced it. I know when I was in my early 20s, I didn't have a high regard for motherhood as a career option, shall we say. I actually never anticipated having kids. It wasn't part of my agenda. It wasn't going to happen. And then I married someone who already had 2, and then eventually I decided I wanted to add a couple. And, my eyes are very opened. But you went down a path that happened to a lot of us, is that once the kids came along, the corporate world was no longer possibly as friendly and flexible as we needed. Hence why so many women start their own businesses, because we can't find that flexibility in corporate land. And so we have to create that flexibility for ourselves. And you, again, were doing what a lot of us do, which was catering to a market that was in a similar situation. Quite often we are our most aligned clients just a few years ago. So you've certainly had that experience. So when you started opening up to that idea that, you know, wow, okay, mums need a different, or as women are getting older, we're no longer in our early 20s, you started to realize there was really different needs going on there. And this is the thing that really drew me to your work, is that I've been running around for too long with this attitude of go hard or go home, and almost punishing myself with respect to diet and exercise as opposed to nourishing myself. Can you talk to us about, or share, you know, in the bigger picture of what you've seen some of that conditioning is actually doing to us and mucking up those mindsets of ours?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest issues that I'm finding or have found over the time, is this conditioning, like you speak of conditioning, where we're so sold on that diet thinking. So, and I think it does stem from, because in our 20s and 30s, maybe our values were different. We didn't have the same concerns that we have now. And I know that when I'm 53 now, so I know that when I hit 50 or even before that, it opens up a whole new gamut, if you like, of needs or concerns that you maybe didn't have before, or even fears watching your own family or your own mother or your own, women in your life around you getting older and getting frailer and unwell. But I don't think, to be fair, I think we're way ahead of that game. Like I'm thinking we're years ahead of that, of where our mothers may have been, because it wasn't a focus, to be, I don't think happiness was a goal, or mindfulness wasn't a goal, or peace of mind. It was just getting the job done. So I think we're ahead in that regard.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's a big thing.
I've often said that my mum at 50 certainly wasn't thinking about, cracking open a new business now that the kids were gone. That wasn't in her mind. I think you're absolutely right. So we're fortunate in the respect that suddenly it's come onto our radar, and it's more of something that we're ready to focus on. We value our health. We want to stay well. We want to be more vibrant and flexible and energetic as the years go on. But we get stuck in this paradigm of how we achieve that.
Yeah, and it is confusing. And I think the issue with weight is that we've been taught, I think, or maybe we think that when we lose weight, we're going to be thin, we're going to keep it off, we're going to be happy. But without that mindset change and the changes, or even awareness of what we're following, maybe the previous thought that you were following from maybe when you were 30 and you were having, doing diets, and you were going off bread, and you were having no carbs, and you were, trying every fad out there. I think whatever we've learnt, we've carried through. So we get into our 50s and we're going, or even 40s, and we don't know how to lose weight. We don't know how to eat normal anymore because we've been told we can't eat so many things. And I think that's the problem, is we stop following our instincts. We want someone to tell us what to eat, and that there's apparently this perfect way or right way to eat. Now, I think that's probably one of the biggest flaws of the whole system, is that we stop listening to what we want. We stop listening and eating for joy and love of food. We stop following our own instincts of what we feel like eating. And I think that's the problem with the whole, there's many problems with the way it mucks up our heads. But that's a particular, I think it's letting go of some of those old beliefs. But if you still, like I've sat with women that know how to lose weight. They've done it before, but unfortunately they couldn't keep it off because it wasn't sustainable. But they're asking me whether they should have an orange or an apple. So they're down to that such nitty-gritty level of, they're going to make a mistake. It's got to be a right way to eat, or there must be a perfect solution to losing weight if I eat the apple or the orange. And it was like, oh my goodness, that kind of thing blows my mind too, because I'm like, just eat the fruit. Put whatever fruit you want in your bowl. It doesn't matter. And, and then I talk to women that maybe they had ice cream and then the next day they didn't eat because they don't want to eat, because they've got that punishment thing. Or again, you mentioned that punishment thing going on, because they feel bad, they feel guilty, they feel ashamed. It's such a horrible whirlwind of, or I don't even know what you call that. It's a horrible way to live and think. So if I can even take a little bit of that away and make people feel happy to eat and know that the bigger picture is far more important than whether they had that bit of ice cream, or, I just want to get rid of that concept of falling off the wagon, because there isn't a wagon. So this is what I mean about, we've been following these things we've learned for so long that we think that is the way.
That one actually there, that concept of falling off the wagon, I think that's one that we can grab and expand. I know that one of the things when you and I were talking last week, and I had in my mind this finite set of time, because we're working together for a certain amount of time,
yes.
But this finite sort of thinking in my head, I must drop the kilos by this date, or it's all over. What was the point? I'm useless. I can't do it. Yeah.
And
so that all or nothing thinking suggested to me that I'm only going to be good and disciplined, like you can see the air quotes that are happening here, for this period of time. And then what am I going to do? Just stop eating? Just stop living? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this idea of what does wellness mean to me? And that concept of actually, I was on a call yesterday. I was running or facilitating a workshop for my mastermind clients, and we had a guest speaker, actually one of the women who's in the mastermind. She has a great set of knowledge around this concept of tiny habits. And so Ruby did a presentation for us. And a part of that was asking us the question, what a woman, hang on, let me get this right. A person like me does things like this. It's the way that we see ourselves.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I've got the notes here. I'm just trying to find where.
Yes, how we perceive ourselves is so important, because we've created it. And we can recreate it. We can change it.
So that concept with the wellness is like the one that I was using. You'd be proud of me here, Leanne.
I'm very proud of you. I'm always proud.
I'm the type of person who, and then you fill that in. So I'm the type of person who prioritizes my health and wellness. And when you think about, this is what I've learned from you, when we're thinking about that in the bigger picture, not in this finite, for the next 7-8 weeks, I'm going to eat in a certain way and I'm going to reward myself by getting on the scales and seeing things change. It was such a myopic view, like I'm looking down here at this tiny, tiny view. But if I actually look up at this bigger picture of wellness, there were so many other components to consider. Can you talk about that? Like what are the other components that we could be bringing into that picture of wellness? What have you seen and what do you feel there?
All right. Well, I can tell you, like when we're talking about I'm that kind of person that blah, what I loved, that is wonderful, because so many women say I'm a comfort eater or I'm an emotional eater. So they've labelled themselves, and that's where that's what they. I'm not sure whether they obviously don't want to stay in that perspective, but that's kind of like their cop out, if you like. Because if you say, I'm a kind of person that does this, that lets you off the hook because you've got a justification for not changing it, I suppose. So that's interesting in itself, I think. So I try and teach people that is a story. So I suppose wellness would be acceptance. I think it's looking at dreams of something bigger, desires. What do you want to feel like? So when we were talking last week about wellness, we were talking about the interview with Oprah and Michelle Obama about what wellness means for her. And it was wonderful because they're both women. One's 50. I don't know how old Oprah is, but I know Michelle's 56. And she was talking about how she's redesigned what it means for her to be well, and so the movement is the way that it suits her. She has recreated herself outside of the politics, outside of her husband and her family. So I think it is having that bigger perspective, like more of a balanced, holistic approach, so that you are thinking well, you are moving your body in a way that you like to move your body and it feels good. You are eating from instinct and eating from the nurturing and energizing point of view, not for weight loss, but for taking care of yourself on a longer term scale. I'm just trying to think, what else do I incorporate that? I already talk about a lot about self-care, but then there's this self-worth, as you've been exploring a lot lately, self-acceptance, self-confidence, and I think liking yourself, liking the way that you are, the way, having a choice, knowing that you've got a choice to show up how you want, that you don't need someone to give you permission or allow it, right? You already had permission to do whatever you wanted to do, but we get lost along the way. So then we start looking outside for help when we really already had all the answers inside. So I think it's trust. I think it's trusting. I think it's, just knowing that you're going to be okay and that we can trust yourself.
I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces when it comes to getting older and wiser, is I believe it's very much a journey into self-trust. But that's the conditioning that's been stuck there in the past, to look for the solutions outside of ourselves, not to trust our own appetites. And that's not just about food, it's appetites in general, like what we're allowed or not allowed to actually desire. But oh my God, I get on my soapbox there, but I'll stay a little bit contained. But I love this concept, and for you listening right now, the concept of designing what wellness looks like for you. So I'm the type of person who prioritizes my health and wellness. What does that mean? And you really made me start thinking, because I was stuck in the paradigm of I was just looking down at the scales, as I said to you. Then we started talking about, well, because what I've been doing is listening. You've been giving me permission, helping me to give myself permission to actually listen to my body. And I think this is an ironic statement. I think we spend too much time in our heads. Like, hello. It's a metadata there. So, and that idea to drop out of my head and start to feel, to get back in touch with my body. The concepts of actually movements can be pleasurable and enjoyable, where as opposed to, let's, as I was saying before, go hard or go home and have this punishment aspect. And it's made me just start to pause. And I had to laugh, Leanne, as I said to you, that I shine a light on this sort of stuff for so many women in business, in terms of owning your worth, valuing yourself, trusting your instincts, all of that stuff. And yet, I was completely missing how important it was in this aspect. And I mean, your personal development, your business development, and the way you take care of yourself so that you can show up in all areas of your life. It's so entwined. Yet I missed this whole bit. And so this redefining wellness for the individual and allowing me to decide, actually, you know what? I've been sleeping better. I've been less aches and pains. I've got more energy during the day. All of these things that I'd forgotten about because I was simply focused on that damn little figure on the scales.
Yeah.
And that, it just like, boom, what a moment to realise that.
It trips everybody up because they're not measuring the true value of everything. So, like, I might talk to someone who's worried about their tummy weight, but then when we get talking, I realize that she's stressed out of her brain. She's not sleeping. She's not eating properly, and she feels miserable and unhappy with herself. The weight, it's like the least of their concerns. So I always think if you are happy and you have got all those foundational health areas, like you say, sleep and movement and eating well and feeling good, you've connected. So what I will say about the work thing, so for you, maybe it's easy to do the business side of it. You totally get all of it. But then to connect back into you is a little harder because you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be open and vulnerable, and you have to be able to be willing to change that. So that's not as easy, even though you know what to do and you help other women. When it comes to turning it back in, it's not so easy to connect. I think we disconnect at some point because it's too daunting, too big. So by teaching women to make it really easy and simple and to chunk it down into little sections to form that foundation, I think that's a really important thing to do, because once you've got that, the weight will go. That's my belief. If you are happy, you are going to be more motivated and more likely to take care of yourself. So I don't see any.
Sorry, darling, go.
I was going to say, I don't see anything great growing from stress and worry and ill health. Nothing will grow.
So that huge part that we're talking about here is the light of self-compassion on yourself and actually allowing yourself to, I know you used the expression before about letting yourself off the hook, but if we look at it from an angle of not so much letting ourselves off the hook, but treating ourselves with self-compassion, recognizing that we don't need to shoehorn wellness in around our life. Wellness actually becomes the foundation of our life because everything becomes easier when we have prioritized that wellness.
Yes.
And that deciding what that personal program looks for. Because I know, and this, again, it's the conditioning piece of how we are supposed to work out and how we are supposed, there's those air quotes again.
Oh, yeah, that should and supposed, they're two terrible words, aren't they?
As soon as you hear yourself saying, I should be doing this and I should be doing that, you're realizing that is coming from outside of yourself. That is a comparison stick to some type of story that we've been exposed to. And so the self-compassion, what I've found, kicks in when it's like, that's not possible for me, and I don't even know if I want it. This is what feels good to me. And that was a revelation that I could actually choose, exercise and movement that was nourishing and felt good, and it could still be effective, where I was really stuck in the paradigm that, no, it doesn't work. I've got to work really hard. So it was that permission to actually take my foot off the accelerator and make choices that were more nourishing than me. For me, was a revelation. Now, anyone listening, they might go, oh, duh, Angela, hello, where have you been? But this seriously was just a new thought process, and I had to recognize how wired in my brain was with how things should be. And that was probably the biggest freedom thing, is no, sit down here and design it yourself.
Yeah. Yep. And like, I look back when we were younger, I played softball, I played netball, I did a lot of things, but only for the hell of it, only for the fun of it, for the joy of it. No other reason. And I think we've lost that, where we go, oh, what would we like to do? What would make us happy? We don't do that anymore. And I think having, like when you said you've got a choice, and being able to question it. So rather than say, well, I should do that, I don't know who tells us we should do a certain thing, but we've got it in our mind that that's the only way it's going to work. But to be able to question that and to give you that choice, so you can say, well, hang on a minute, I don't even like doing that. I don't even like running. I don't want to run.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah, that's right. So having that to be able to question it and go, well, that's not really working for me. I don't feel like doing that, rather than just keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
No, and I see parallels here. And again, I'm seeing parallels in the business sense as well, and thinking one of the things that I talk to clients about is that choosing marketing, like the way in which you choose to market and communicate your business, it needs to align with not only your skills, like what you can actually do, but what feels good. And then guess what? You're more likely to do it. And it was like, oh, duh, that works on the other side of life as well. So it's the same type of thing. And I love the idea of, those words, fun and joy. As you just said, all the things that you did, which was purely for fun and delight and joy, when we're in that space, we're much more likely to repeat them. But I know with myself, and I've certainly seen it with a lot of other women as well, we can lose touch with what is fun and joyful for us.
Yeah, we stop asking ourselves.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And I think that would be a challenge for any of us to actually sit down and go, okay, I'm going to write myself a list of the 10 or 20 things that are purely fun, enjoyable, delightful, that it's either in my life or that I want to do. And I know I might struggle a little with actually saying, okay, what do I do that's purely play? Nothing to do with work, nothing to do with family, nothing to do with cleaning the house, etc., but just pure delight. I think the list at the moment, to be honest, would be a little bit short. I think I might need to do a little bit of work on that one. Yes,
I've recently discovered plants. Got to keep them alive, but I've discovered plants. But it's funny that when we were younger, I suppose we could be selfish back then because we didn't have family and kids, and I don't know, I'm not sure I did a great job of work because I went out a lot and I got home late a lot, and we danced a lot. So I think it's just we've lost that way of. We haven't had the choice for a long time, and that's the great thing about this age that I'm at now, and that all the women that you know too, is this is the perfect time to redesign what you want, because the last 10 years were kind of a debacle. Like looking after the kids, trying to juggle the business at home, husband was away all the time, and it was just a ratty time where you didn't get up in the morning and go, what would I like to do today? It was just like responding and being reactive rather than proactive. So I think now is a great time. My kids are in a happier space. We're all a bit more settled. Yeah, I think it's a great time for redesigning, being re-inspired, and making changes that you want. You have the time, even though we say we don't have the time, we have the time if we want to make changes.
Well, I remember listening to a couple of other podcasts recently that was saying everyone has the same 24 hours. So if we actually say to ourselves that we don't have the time, that's actually not true. So if we're going to be truthful with ourselves, it's a case of saying, I haven't prioritized that at the moment. I haven't chosen to prioritize that yet. And that's true, isn't it? That's the real part. So I actually like to think of, rather than selfish, I like to think of self-full, because
yes, I love that word.
It's a good word. It's the idea of us putting ourselves up the priority totem pole so that we're first equal with the other people in our world.
So we were fun, because I hear that from women, I'm not fun anymore. Well, you are. It's just that you've been a bit busy, like, looking after everyone. And, I think we just need to, it doesn't have to be, we're not obviously going to go out and party all night. We just need to find things that make us feel happy again. Because I think we disconnect. And the other thing that I was going to say about, it's interesting to think that the health is separate to, like you said, the other part of your world, or other, I can't remember the wording you used, other side, the other side of life. So it's interesting that it's even viewed as a different part, where I've always had the view that it's always been part of my life. So that could be an aha moment where people you just got to kind of reconnect them back in and make them integrate a little better.
Well, that's why you're called in your own next chapter to help educate us around these possibilities. And I'm really seeing the picture of designing our own wellness map. So what does our personal wellness map look like? And it needs to involve the fun and the play that we were touching on, and the creativity. And for a long time, I got stuck in this paradigm thinking that I'm not creative, where what I actually was thinking is I'm not artistic. Like, don't give me a paintbrush because that doesn't work. But there's many other ways in which I can be creative. So making sure that's not mixed up. But that idea of what fun and playfulness is in my life, because that's essential. How do I nourish myself with what I'm putting into my body? And that idea of coming back and connecting to trusting my own damn instincts. If I felt like, which I just had for lunch, avocado and corn fritters and broccolini, go for it. Like, there isn't, like, that's what my body is asking for. So how am I nourishing it? Bringing in movement, bringing in, I think, learning, growth and learning, I think, is an incredibly important part for me of my wellness map. But there's all those pieces there. And I love this idea of shaking off the conditioning of how I used to be and creating this new map for going forward, which is without a doubt the sort of thing that you do to help someone like me open up to this new way of being and thinking. It's very exciting.
It is, because I must have, I hadn't considered it in that way. Like, I know usually the typical journey from where we start to where we go to get ready to make change. And I have a map for, like, your day, how a day would look and what we're missing in your day, or where we need to actually add into your day. But it is things like your desires and joy. It could even be a higher level map that has that connection. You need the trust, you need the joy, the movement, and then from there we work back your actions that are going to get you there. So we know what we want on the top layer, and then we work maybe like a pyramid, and then or even from the bottom, and then we work to the actions that you need to do to get you there. And it's not about, as you can see, it's not even about weight. It's never been about weight. It usually comes down to not feeling good enough. Yeah. That's a whole new gamut. But I love this idea of mapping as well, from the top right down.
Yeah, that good old chestnut of the not good enough. And I think that's another whole piece of the conditioning, is how we're told that we need to look. And that this is, again, feminist rant coming up of how, we need to be a certain size or a certain age or a certain look to actually be valued, and, rejecting that entirely. I may look very different at 51 than I was at 21, but the relationship with self and the confidence and the worthiness that's there now wouldn't trade for all the options in the world. But yes, it was that illuminating the blind spots. We all have blind spots, and that's why I'm a huge believer. I don't move through life without mentors now. Like, I trust myself, but I also trust myself to choose good people to work with to help me see my blind spots so that I can continue to grow, be that in wellness, like with you, be that in spiritual mentoring, which I do, and business mentoring, which I have, as well as what I do for a living. I just think it's incredibly vital so that we can become the best versions of ourselves. Not the best version of what the world says we should be, but our best version
of what you want.
Yes, and the roles that we are playing for the role modeling we're doing for our kids as well. I mean, I've often said to my beautiful daughter that, look, we will never be 5'11" and a slim body type. It's not our body type, but we can be the most healthiest, vibrant version of us. And that means boobs, hips, and all. And that is completely okay.
And it comes back to perceiving how you perceive yourself, which you may have formed that perception right back when you were at high school, probably even primary school.
Yeah.
So we carry that perception through until we decide to change it. I love the idea that you have a team. You have a team looking after you. That's what I love. That's what's going on there. And also, I wouldn't swap where I've been to now. It's still, obviously, we've learnt what we've learnt, but I'm in a happier, more peaceful mindset. And what I've learnt's been amazing, because now I can teach others too.
That peaceful mindset, that word peaceful, I
love peace.
Exhaled as you said that. And yes, I love that you picked up, which I didn't even recognise there for a moment, the concept of team. I'm going to call it Team Angela, because I've got, there's a physio that's on there as well that I see when I need to, and there's a psychologist that I will go and see when I need to. And there's, yourself in the wellness space, and there's lots of people that are on our team.
Yes.
And we deserve that. And that's this whole idea of rebranding what it looks like and feels like, and the expectations on ourselves at this age, and that whole idea of designing our own wellness map. Let's decide who's on the team to help you bring your version of wellness to life, but it's defined by you. And I do love that you pointed out that there can be a perception of what things are supposed to be like until we choose to change that, because that's so true. We have the power to change, and the whole next chapter cycle of change that I rabbit on about a lot. The first step is being discontent. It doesn't feel good any longer. So then you've got to decide, what do you desire? What do you want different? But then the next step is decide. So we have to decide to choose for ourselves, to put ourselves first equal, to define what wellness looks and feels like for us, not for how we've been conditioned to believe it needs to be. It's exciting to think that we've got that power now.
I just did a post today about that, actually, about the fact that your size, so your self-worth and your value had actually nothing to do with your size or your weight, because you decided a long time ago already. You already decided what your self-worth and value was about. And unfortunately we think, it's our weight, that's the cause of it, but there's actually just a symptom of a bigger problem or a bigger thing that's going on around you. So the fact that the only thing that decides your self-worth and your value is you takes away that pressure that it's your weight or it's your size that's causing it. That's what I found. I just did a post on that today, which is so beautiful.
There you go. We're both on the same page without a doubt.
We are. Now, the other thing I was going to say about belief. So rather than a blind spot, I would call it probably your belief. So you're slowly reframing or changing these beliefs.
Yeah, we need to be aware of them before we can do anything about them. And that's where the self-awareness part, you suddenly recognize what you're saying and go, whoa, that's actually limiting me to have that belief, to have that thought, to have that blind spot, whatever you like to call it. If we bring it out, illuminate it, and have a look at it and say, does this story actually still fit where I am and what I want today? And I think it's like, you wouldn't wear clothes, very many, unless they're heirlooms, that you bought when from 30 years ago. You'd chuck them out. You'd replace them. Well, it sounds as like we need to do this spring cleaning with our beliefs, doesn't it?
I love it. And the fact that you question whether it is actually true. So a lot of the time, same with self-talk and beliefs, anything like that, is having that ability to slow it down and go, well, actually, where's the proof on that? Is that actually true? Where did that come from? So it's sort of tackling it with curiosity, which was spoken about before, rather than just believing what you think.
Yeah, that's an important one, that where did it come from? Because often you find out, hang on, that's my mum's, or that was, school teachers, or that was, Fox News, or God help us all. That was what actually gave you that belief. So, I think we should try those beliefs on for size, and if they don't suit, let's get the suckers out of our wardrobe.
I love it. That's such a great analogy.
I like it too. Well, my darling, this has just been one of those wonderful, warm conversations where it's just an exchange of experiences between the two of us. And as I said before we hit record, the whole purpose of these conversations is simply to shine a light on a new possibility. So hopefully the women who are listening to this conversation today will start to actually go, you know what? I haven't looked at my own wellness map. I need to do a little bit of a spring clean of those beliefs. Maybe there is a different way. Perhaps I don't have to beat myself up in a really hard gym class because I feel guilty. Maybe there's more to me than just my weight or whatever the other thoughts are that are in our heads. And so the role that you play for women in this area is an incredibly important one for us to spotlight these new possibilities. So where do we find you in the world? If someone's listening and goes, well, I think I need a bit of a mindset spring clean with this woman, where do I find Leanne?
Well, I'm usually on Facebook. I spend a lot of time on Facebook in my Uplifted Women's group, who's about to get a rebrand, but that's the name of the group right now. That's the complementary group. Leanne Vanderlight, my personal profile. So I tend to put a little bit of, especially wisdom. At the moment we all need a little bit of support and wisdom and maybe some open-mindedness right now. But even just TLC, it's just a reminder. I do a lot of that. I am on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram. Did I say Instagram already? So typically under my name and my website, which is uplifthealthandfitness.com.au, which I'm about to rebrand as well. But we're working on a bigger picture. I like to think, it's a really important, much, much bigger picture and much bigger conversation than weight. So, which is what I've always talked about. But I really appreciate helping me get the message out that it's not about weight. It's about how you feel.
Absolutely. I love the quote that's on the homepage of your website, which is uplifthealthfitness.com.au, and the quote on the beautiful koi fish on the homepage, it's time to choose you, not the next diet. I went, yes, I've had enough. I remember someone saying to me that diet is die with T on the end.
Oh,
so stay away from that.
That's awesome. I call it BS diet thinking. We want to get away from the diet thinking because diets have been, basically that was someone selling a diet. That's all it was. Someone told you not to eat that because they were selling a diet. So, we just got to question everything.
We do with an open mind. So thank you so much for your time today. It's been a delight to share some of these perspectives and to dig a little deeper so that we can create our own definition of wellness.
Yep, no, that's wonderful. I love that all the stuff we talked about. More food for thought. Excuse the pun, but that's the thing. Good food for thought and eat that whatever we like.
I love it. Thanks, Leanne.
All right. Thanks, Angela. Bye.
And to you, our lovely listener, I hope that as we have discussed here today, we'll keep on with the pun, that this has provided much nourishing food for thought. You have the power, you have the opportunity now to hit that pause button on some of those stories that have been running in your head for so long. You can recognize them, you can look at them and you can go, does this really suit me any longer? Is this even my story? Did someone else give it to me? And the answer is you probably have been an incredible victim, and I'll just use that word very specifically in this instance, victim of conditioning that's been thrown at us for so long. But it's changed now, especially as we get into these wonderful power years and space opens up in the world for us to redefine what wellness looks like for us. 3-4-dimensional wellness, not one-dimensional, which is just about looking at that number on the scales. Now, this has been a really quite personal episode in the respect that this is part of the journey that I am on, but such a part of this with me knowing my own worthiness these days, being really anchored in self-worth. I think that gave me a much better opportunity to open up to these ideas that have been shared with me a lot quicker. I'm not beating myself up anymore in general about life. So to be able to let go of this conditioning in this particular area was a little more easeful for me. That's why I keep rabbiting on about self-worth all the time. And believe me, there's much more that I'll be talking about in this area going forward, because I do see it as the foundation for all of our growth so that we can flourish in our next chapter, however that looks for us. So thank you once again for spending your time listening to this podcast. I hope it's given you an uplift, to use Leanne's word today, and I look forward to sharing more goodness with you on the next episode. Until then, take very good care. Thanks so much for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. I really do appreciate your time. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And of course, my website, angelarasmus.com. If you enjoy the show, I'd love you to share it with another woman who's in the midst of business and life beyond 40. And if you love it, a review on iTunes or whatever app you listen in on would be fabulous. Reviews somehow impact that deeply mysterious algorithm and make it easier for the show to be found, which is always a good thing. So thanks again, and until next time, take care.